Innovation. When you start lecturing on board cruise ships, you have to be a little creative and have to be a little innovative. Just a moment for background. You go into a venue on a cruise ship, and it may be a bar that's had the tables rearranged in the back. No bartender, no booze being served, but that's the small venue because they only expected maybe 15 or 20 people. And occasionally you get 70 who show up. Sometimes you have an auditorium on board the cruise ship for entertaining purposes, and it may hold 800 or 900 or 1,000 people, and you have 25 who show up. So you have to be a little prepared, be a little innovative, be a little creative, but most of all, know how to manage and work with the audience. One of the things that you have to understand about cruise ship lecturing is that they want you to be providing what they call edutainment. Edutainment is educational, but entertaining. If you don't provide that, you don't get very good scores. If you don't get good scores, you don't get asked back. And I can't tell you how many college and university professors that I've seen over the years as a passenger and also as a lecturer who have not been asked back. Extremely boring. They know their topic, they know it well, they can't entertain the people while they're educating them, so they don't get asked back. There's a couple problems and issues to think about. Now, when you go into a stage and you don't know what kind of microphone you're going to have. For example, it may be a lavalier like this one, totally little wireless system, and it's the same if I speak this way or if I speak this way. However, you may be stuck with one of those things that's attached to the lectern of the podium, in which case it sounds real big like this, but if you go like this, and I'm talking about these slides up here like this. So you really have to be able to work with whatever they give you. And sometimes they give you a nice handheld microphone, which is nice, except people who forget to talk about it, they're like this. So I would suggest that when you start to do more formal presentations, even in a business setting, make sure you go into the stage and see what you have to work with. Take a look at what kind of microphone. And practice keeping the one here with you. If you're going to be using the handheld, make sure you don't turn away from it. It's very, very important that the people in the back of the room be able to see and hear what you're doing. Sometimes the microphone doesn't work. And people in the audience are looking at you like, what? So you have to be watching the audience, because sometimes your microphone will cut out and you have no idea it's cut out. Sometimes you get feedback, and if you are sort of accustomed to this sort of thing, when it sort of stops, you just sort of stand forward and say, please give me a little more feedback. But again, it's knowing the audience. Some audiences don't have a sense of humor. If you're on a cruise ship where there's a lot of Germans, they don't have a good sense of humor, and neither do the Japanese. If you're on with a bunch of Aussies or Kiwis or some Brits, they've got a different sense of humor. If you're on with some French people, some Italians, and some others, they have even a still different set of jokes that they like to hear and not hear, and styles. So you really need to pay attention to the cultural aspects of what you're doing when you're speaking on a cruise ship audience. Once in a while the lights will go out, in which case the whole place just goes dark. If a generator has a little blip on it, which has happened to me once, you're standing there on the stage and suddenly it's absolutely pitch black. You can't see squat and they can't see you and they can't hear you. But usually that comes back on within a second or two. And then you just sort of lean forward and say something like, they told me they paid the electric bill. But try to inject a little bit of humor and make it a little bit fun for the people when these unexpected things come up. Things will happen like bright lights in your face. I've had a system where the light is so bright I couldn't see the front edge of the stage 3 or 4 feet away. much less the audience. And I insist on being with the audience and seeing the audience. In fact, when you're getting to know your audience, one of the little tricks that I've learned from a very, very good speaker I had a lot of experience listening to and also respected, while the people are coming into the auditorium, I get down on the floor and walk among the seats. And, hey, how you doing? Where are you from? Where are you from? Oh, glad to see you. Make yourself available to the audience. This endears them to you, and suddenly it's not a strange person, an unknown person. Oh, he asked me, and we lived in Columbus, Ohio, or we lived down in southern France someplace, and he's also talked to me about his pets and his dogs and asked about my little pet and my dog. So they talk around, and this gets people to come to your other lectures. Usually if you're lecturing on a cruise ship, there's a series. It may be 3, 5, 6, 9 different lectures. So you're always trying to give a little PR for the next one. If the projector stops working, you're in deep doo-doo if you don't know all the material. Now, I like to have graphics and do a lot of graphic stuff, but you should probably practice a little bit by putting up the slide. Go in a downtime in the auditorium. Put your slides up on and go sit in the very last row and see if you can read your own slides. If you can't, you got to change something. What I have found it works very well is what I call the 24-24 rule. I violate it once in a while. Try not to. It's using 24 point font size. I like Arial. It's easy, no serifs, much easier to read from a distance. And no more than 24 words on a slide. This makes it very easy for people to see what you're doing. Don't stand in the path of the slides. I get accused of this all the time. I'm standing here, and the projector's behind me up there, and the screen is here, talking to the slides. You should not do that. You should be standing to the side, talking to the audience, occasionally pointing to the slides. Use bullet points. Don't put sentences. And please don't read the slides. It's not good to read the slides. Occasionally you'll get somebody who will have a cell phone, and they will ignore. No cell phones in the auditorium, please. And it goes off. I just stop right in mid-sentence and look at that person and say, tell them it's not too late to get the rest of the lecture. Come on in. Or if it's somebody with a little bit of slack, I said, have they told you what the menu is going to be at dinner yet? Or could we put that on the microphone so we could all share the joke? But say something acknowledging the fact. You don't want to embarrass the person because they're already usually embarrassed badly enough when their phone goes off, but just have a little bit of fun with it. And again, it endears the audience to you because they sympathize and they understand. And that person should not have had that cell phone on. Somebody comes in late, you can do the same thing. I've actually walked in to an auditorium and started lecturing and had people come in late. Sometimes I just sort of stop. Did you get the call?
No. It tells me when I turn it off. I guess we'll learn how to instruct it not to talk up so much.
It's called volume control, Phil. You can get there. But sometimes if people come in, and I'll just stop, just midstream, and just stand there and watch them. You know, there's a couple seats down here, you know, and there's always seats on the front row. I don't know what the problem is. They don't like to come and sit on the front row. I like them on the front row. So I'll come on down. You can get the tomatoes thrown easier from here. You know, just welcome down. Somebody drops something. You could say something clever like, gee, Bill, it looks like she dropped the setting out of her diamond ring there. Or the hardest thing to deal with is watching what's going on in the audience. Because invariably what will happen is somebody, especially if you've got a big audience, you know, 300, 400, 500 people, somebody will just, at the question and answer session at the end, ask you a question that's just totally off the wall. It's off topic, and you can't ignore it because you're encouraged to field the questions that come in. You just say, I'm sorry, Bill, that wasn't really on the topic today, but if you'd like to discuss it after we're finished, I'd be happy to do that. And the same thing is true about controversial questions. You do get sometimes really controversial questions. And they're not so innovative and creative as you'd like to think they are, but they get them. And the best thing you do, again, is just say, I'm sorry, that's sort of outside the bounds of what I'm supposed to talk about today, but if you meet me after the speech, I'll be happy to take care of it for you. Last thing you should do is thank everybody for attending. Do a little bit of PR shot for your next presentation if you're going to have one, and then go off stage and answer your questions. Madam Toastmaster.